why on earth are the big 5 personality factors such bad predictors of work performance? I mean, almost everybody would agree that personality is very important in your job. But surprisingly, one of the biggest meta-analyses that have been conducted until now could show that in comparison, for example, to intelligence tests, in comparison to tests of general mental ability, the big 5 personality factors are really bad predictors of work performance. They predict very bad if somebody will do a great job or if he will do a poor job. So if you take a look at the numbers, general mental ability correlates with work performance on average at about 0.65. And if you compare this really high correlation with the correlation of the best predictor of the big 5 for work performance, which is conscientiousness, which correlates at R equals to 0.22, and the other personality factors are even worse. So for example, emotional stability correlates at about R equals to 0.12, extroversion 0.09, agreeableness 0.08, and openness to experiences even 0.04. So you see, in comparison to intelligence tests, the correlation between personality factors and work performance is very weak to almost not existent. But why is that? I mean, almost everybody would agree that personality is very important for your job. So these results are almost unbelievable. Well, there are at least 3 quite good explanations. First of all, it varies with the job. So in some jobs, for example, if we're talking about nurses, or if we talk about salespersons, or if we talk about managers, for people who almost all the time have to work with other people and who have to get along with other people, for those kinds of jobs, the predictive validity, the prognostic power of the big 5 is already higher. Whereas on the other hand, if you are, for example, working in a factory on an assembly line and you are almost never talking to anybody, or if you are driving a truck all day long, then your personality is not really that important. In fact, there are some jobs in which your personality doesn't matter at all. For example, if you are a programmer or something like that and you interact with other people only once a month, then of course it doesn't matter how agreeable you are or how extroverted. The second explanation is that the correlation between personality factors and work performance is not always linear. So for example, think about the factor emotional stability, in which you can also find how fearful somebody is. And sometimes, to some degree, it can be quite helpful to have no anxiety at all. So for example, if you're a manager, it can be quite helpful to go into negotiations with other company managers without any anxiety. But on the other hand, if you're completely fearless, if you are afraid of nothing at all, and you say, well, we can do that, everything is possible, and well, let's buy this company, it will work out perfectly. If you don't have any second thoughts about that, and if you don't have any worries about that something might go wrong, well, then you might fell some decisions that are actually quite bad for your company. And it's the same with extroversion. Of course, there are many situations in which it can be quite helpful that you are entertaining for other people and that you are able to speak freely and that you like to be at the center of attention. But sometimes it can also be too much. For example, if all of your co-workers are very focused and all of a sudden you begin to sing, or if you try to entertain everybody, of course this can also be counterproductive. So the correlation between big 5 personality factors is not always linear, but sometimes it's curvilinear. And that's another reason why the correlation between personality and work performance is not that high, or not as high as we might expect. The third and last reason is that the big 5 personality factors are quite global. They are not specific for work performance. And actually, if you take a look at questionnaires that are very specific for work performance. Like for example, in Germany, we have the BIP, which is really focused on your personality that you need for your work. For example, it's about how good you are at teamwork, or how good you are in other social competences that are really important for the workplace, and how strong is your achievement motivation. And if you take a look at those personality factors, you can find much higher correlations between personality and work performance. But nevertheless, the correlations are still not that high as those for general mental ability, which still is the best predictor for work performance, even though you also have to keep in mind how complex a job is. So for example, if you're driving a truck, then you don't need a general mental ability that is that high. Whereas if you're a professor for mathematics, for example, of course, then you need very high general mental ability. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this episode and you found it a little bit helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and maybe we will see you next time.